Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good evening. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. Motorists on the M74 face restrictions due to a contraflow between junction 11 and 9. Expect longer journey times. The A4232 northbound from the A48 interchange to M4 junction 33 is congested. In Barnsley, a collision on the A628 eastbound between A6024 and A16 involves lane closures. Delays persist on M1 southbound from junction 15 to 13 around Milton Keynes with 20-minute delays. In Wiltshire, on M4 eastbound between junction 17 and 16 has closed one lane. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Courtesy of Marquis Leisure, you could be driving away with this brand new Elnag Baron 560 motorhome. It comfortably sleeps four, comes with skyroof, integrated kitchen and bathroom, and is worth over £67,000. And that's not all, as we'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that wherever this motorhome takes you, it takes you there in style. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
Very, very good evening to you and welcome to GBN Tonight with me, Martin Daubney. Tonight, the world mourns a pope, a leader remembered as much for his progressive reforms as for the debates they sparked within the Catholic Church itself. And the question now, will the Church continue down this path or will it return to its traditional conservative roots? And not a single NHS hospital in London offers women-only spaces, and that's despite last week's Supreme Court's ruling that trans women are not legally women. On tonight's show, I'll be joined by one of the nurses who's taking her NHS trust to tribunal because they let a transgender colleague into the women's changing rooms. Plus, on tonight's show, I'll be joined by a 100-year-old veteran who is backing a campaign that is raising £1 million to get World War II veterans back to the beaches of Normandy for one last push to mark the magnificent anniversary of VE Day. Well, that's come on tonight's action-packed show, but first, here's your news headlines with Sophia Wensler.
These are your headlines. Now, as you've been hearing, the King has sent heartfelt condolences and profound sympathy following the death of Pope Francis at the age of 88. The pontiff, who was Bishop of Rome and head of the Catholic Church, spent 12 years in the Vatican after becoming Pope in 2013. His death was announced by Cardinal Farrell in a statement released by the Vatican this morning, who said his entire life was dedicated to the service of the Lord and his Church. It comes just one day after he made a surprise appearance at the Vatican Vatican's Easter Sunday service, blessing crowds in St. Peter's Square. In recent years, his papacy has been marked by concerns about his health, with a 5-week hospital stay for an infection that developed into double pneumonia. The Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, has posted on X saying he is deeply saddened to hear of the death of His Holiness, describing the late pontiff as a pope for the poor, the downtrodden and the forgotten. Meanwhile, the associate editor of the Catholic Herald, Simon Caldwell, told GB News the Catholic Church is likely to move away from Pope Francis's progressive leadership.
It hasn't left a very united church. Not everybody has identified with the agenda of Francis. So I think that will be reflected in the conclave. I mean, Francis has chosen many cardinals who he thinks will uphold his legacy, but they will, in the end, they're going to do what they think is right. And I would be surprised if we have a Francis too. I really would.
In other news, Russian drone attacks have been reported across Ukraine just hours after the end of a 30-hour Easter truce was declared by Moscow. Ukraine's Air Force issued air raid alerts for the eastern half of the country, while in the southern city of Mykolaiv, explosions were heard. It was not immediately clear whether there were any casualties. It follows a brief Easter truce declared by Vladimir Putin, which both Ukraine and Russia accused each other of breaching. The UK government has dismissed the ceasefire as a one-day stunt, backing Ukraine's call for a longer pause. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump has said he hopes Russia and Ukraine will make a deal this week. And pressure is growing for the Prime Minister to break his silence on the Supreme Court's ruling that biological sex defines a woman. Sir Keir Starmer has been accused of refusing to stop a plot by ministers to thwart the landmark gender judgment. Labour MPs are reportedly plotting to circumvent the judgment in leaked WhatsApp messages. It's understood Number 10 has not taken action against those involved, insisting the messages aren't an attempt to undermine the court's decision. It comes after trans rights activists gathered for an emergency demonstration over the weekend, where multiple statues were defaced, including that of feminist hero Millicent Fawcett. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper has slammed the vandalism as disgraceful, but Sir Keir Starmer is yet to comment.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to news alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sophia, and welcome back to GBN Tonight with me, Martin Daubney. Now, the Pope passed away this morning after the holiest day in the Christian calendar. Despite his poor health, the Pope recovered enough to leave hospital and just yesterday was greeting crowds on Easter Sunday in St. Peter's Square. To some, he was seen as a breath of fresh air. To others, a controversial reformer who blurred the lines between faith and politics. The big question now is, will the Church continue down this path of so-called progressive liberalism, or will it return to its more traditional roots? Well, behind the prayers and candlelight, all eyes are now on the Vatican as the new chapter begins and the battle for the soul of the Church gets underway. Okay, thank you very much. Now, let's get now to my studio guest. I'm joined in the studio by Jimmy Burns, OBE, the author of Francis, Pope of Good Promise. Jimmy, welcome to the show. Pleasure to have your company. First of all, may I start by asking you, as an author of this excellent book, you also spent time with the former pontiff. How do you remember him as a person and as a pope?
Well, I suppose the sort of clearest memories I've got are two, which are sort of contrasting and get to the man and the public figure. The first one was when he went outside Italy for the first time to Brazil, which was in the summer of 2013 when he was elected Pope. He went to the World Youth gathering there, and there were sort of millions of people in Rio de Janeiro. What struck me was just this extraordinary empathy he had with people of all ages and faiths, I would have thought, and how he managed to demonstrate a very sort of humble way of going about things. I mean, the way he dressed was different to previous popes, obviously, and the way he spoke, he didn't sort of speak down at people. He spoke a language which I thought most people in those huge crowds could really understand. The second sort of event, I suppose, in my life, which was a very personal one, was when myself and my wife, on our 40th anniversary, we had a kind of quite a sort of intimate meeting with him. And it was very, very simple, but deeply human, in the sense that all that happened was that he took our hands, both our two hands in his hands, and looked us straight in the eye and said, you know, this is your 40th anniversary. I said, thank you for seeing us. And he said, which of you has been the most patient? Well, I mean, to anyone who's been through marriages, ups and downs and things, you couldn't have a more human question to ask, and a great understanding of the struggles, but also the rewards of marriage.
Now, Jimmy Burns, if I may interject, we just have some breaking news here. The Vatican has released a statement saying the suspected cause of death of Pope Francis has just been released as a stroke and heart failure. Now, we know the former pontiff was suffering from double pneumonia, has spent 38 days in hospital prior to his passing. But now the cause of death confirmed, Jimmy Burns, as stroke and heart failure. I guess in the end, his body simply found it too much to handle.
Yes, I mean, let's not forget, as you point out, he'd been, you know, several weeks not well. He had sort of half a lung from his youth. But I think, you know, for believers and non-believers, but I mean particularly, you know, Catholics around the world and Christians, the fact that his last public appearance was on the day of what we believe is the resurrection of Christ was an extraordinary way to go. I mean, I don't think he could have asked for a better exit.
And we're seeing live pictures on our screen now of crowds amassing outside the Vatican. And Jimmy Burns, this is no less than you'd expect, an extraordinarily popular former pontiff, a bit of a rock and roll star in his own way. He had a huge following amongst young people. And perhaps that's because he seemed to embrace a more progressive strand, perhaps, of Catholicism.
Well, I know that there's a sort of natural debate with everything that goes on in the world, and it's a pretty sort of binary debate between, you know, what is progressive and what is not progressive, what is liberal, what is not, what is woke and what is not. I think, I mean, this is my personal view of knowing the man and the papacy, is that he transcends all that. Let's not forget that, you know, if one believes in it, you know, the Pope is meant to be, you know, from St. Peter onwards, so the Catholics believe, a sort of, you know, the hotline to the person out there, you know. But it's more than that. He is meant to reflect the Gospels. And, you know, people don't go on about whether Jesus was progressive or not. I mean, Jesus was someone who spoke truth to power, who was among the marginalized, who always made a point of reaching out to people who other people just would not tolerate. I mean, you know, the prostitute, the tax collector, the blind man. You know, these were people that he reached out compassionately to. And I think you just have to look at the reactions around the world, right across the world, from people with faith, without faith, Christians, non-Christians. It's quite extraordinary and unprecedented. You know, not one single leader of government anywhere in the world is right. You can try and quote me back on this, but I can't see any negative statement from anyone in a position of power around the world, which is an extraordinary recognition of this person who's really gone down in history as a real universal person for our times.
And Jimmy, do you think the great illusion, if you like, the great skill of Pope Francis was, I spoke to Jacob Rees-Mogg earlier on the show, and he was saying that despite the fact that Pope Francis called capitalism the dung of the devil, despite the fact he spoke with compassion on issues of sexuality, famously responding, "Who am I to judge?" about the question of gay priests, to the point where Elton John once called him a hero. He spoke out on climate change, on a ceasefire in Gaza. All the, if you like, the veneer of progressive liberalism, but in actual fact, the Catholic Church maintained its steadfast direction of travel.
Well, I mean, I've got huge respect for Jacob. We don't agree on most things politically, and we're both Catholics, and we have a slightly different view of our faith, of our institution of the Church. I think we both share the same faith in mutual respect. I mean, I don't see it that way. I think he, what the Pope was doing was actually broadening this quite lumbering institution, which is the Roman Catholic Church, which, as one priest famously told me, you've got to understand, Jimmy, for the Roman Catholic Church to change course, it's like a sort of, huge tanker on the high seas. Takes quite a long time to turn around. But in fact, if you look back at the 14 years of the papacy, I mean, we've seen an extraordinary kind of, I call it light coming into the darkness. I mean, speaking a language to people who felt very disconnected with their own church. I'm the father of, one of my daughters is in a gay marriage. I mean, people who were gays felt totally disconnected from the institution of the church. Women felt very disconnected. And of course, that's not even to touch the sexual abuse issue, which of course, I'm not for 1 minute would Pope Francis, and he would be the first person to admit it, has he solved that issue. It's a deep seamed problem, not just for the Catholic Church, but for other denominations. But he certainly has listened to the issue and tried to deal with it in a way that none of his predecessors did.
And just to repeat that breaking news, if you're joining us on GB News tonight, the Pope Francis died of a stroke and subsequent irreversible heart failure. The Pope's death was confirmed with an echocardiogram, and Pope Francis confirmed wishes in his final testament to be buried at Rome's Basilica of St. Mary Major. Could I get your reaction to the choice of the place of burial there, Jimmy Burns? In life, he didn't want the grandeur of the position. He always enjoyed a modest, humble papacy, and it seems in death the choice of burial site also reflects that.
Yes, I mean, you're quite right. I mean, he began the papacy, but the first decision he took was not to actually live inside the Vatican, but to go to a sort of guest house, which was quite political, because he knew that in a guest house he would listen to the various people coming through and pick up on the vibes and rumours and all that. So, but it was a sign of his own humility to a certain extent. And I think the fact that he's chosen, for instance, not to be buried in a single coffin, not as previous popes have done, certainly most recent popes, in a sort of three coffins in one, is a new one. The fact that he's not being buried inside the Vatican, but in a church that does belong to the Vatican, but still, it's a sign that he wanted to do things differently. And in death, as in life, he wants to be remembered as a pope that didn't fear breaking with certain traditions simply because they were there,
Yeah, Jimmy, and just to repeat that breaking news, if you're joining us, the Vatican has just issued a statement confirming that Pope Francis died of a stroke and subsequent irreversible heart failure, and the Pope's death was confirmed with an echocardiogram. And Pope Francis has confirmed his wishes in his final testament to be buried at Rome's Basilica of St. Mary Major. Jimmy Burns, reflecting, if you can, perhaps a personal vignette. You said you spent time with the former pontiff, with your wife, obviously a very special and dear man to you.
I think he was, and I'm in mourning like so many other people. The sort of, I think what for me made him very, very special was the fact that he did sort of go across frontiers, across boundaries, And he, his most enduring encyclical, i.e. encyclical is the papal documents that he writes now and again, was Laudato Si, which is really all about how we are all interconnected as human beings, particularly to one another in terms of mutual respect and compassion, and also to the planet that we happen to have responsibility for. He took his name, Francis, from St. Francis of Assisi, who was, a medieval saint who actually sort of loved nature, loved birds, loved animals, and had huge respect for humanity. And I think he spoke a language which certainly reaches out to a lot of people around the world, which is, inclusive and not exclusive, tolerant, a belief in justice, and also a conciliator. I mean, you just have to look at the 60 trips he did abroad. A lot of them were to the furthest reaches of the world, but a lot of them to places where you had battling communities with each other, and he managed to get them both, at least for a while, to the same table.
Thank you very much for joining us on tonight's show. Jimmy Burns, OBE, author of Francis, Pope of Good Promise. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you. Giving us your reflections. Thank you
very much.
Now, moving on, not a single NHS hospital in London offers women-only spaces, and that's despite last week's Supreme Court ruling that trans women are not legally women. Next, I'll be joined by one of the nurses who's taking her NHS-trusted tribunal because they let a transgender colleague into the women's changing rooms. That's next.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
Buckingham Palace is pressing ahead with plans for the King and Queen to visit Rome as Pope Francis recovers from pneumonia when they travel to Italy next month.
GB News Royal correspondent Cameron Walker's with us. Are you going with them?
I am, indeed, yes. We will be covering it for GB News, but huge question mark because, of course, the Pope's still in hospital, isn't he? And he wasn't. Look, he's incredibly sick. He's got pneumonia, still battling pneumonia. This was released by the Vatican over the weekend. This is Pope Francis inside the Hospital Gemelli in Rome, in the chapel. Royal sources say they are in daily contact with the Vatican over whether this visit can go ahead, and they also insist that the outlook for the Pope remains positive. So they are pushing ahead with plans for King Charles and Queen Camilla to visit the Holy See. It's not going to be the first time, if he is still in hospital, that they've had to rearrange a state visit last minute. If you remember a couple of years ago with those dreadful riots in France, President Macron had to very embarrassingly ask the King to postpone the state visit. So Buckingham Palace can rearrange things last minute. But of course, it's the British government, as we know, that requests the King to travel on these state visits. He'll be having an audience with Prime Minister Meloni. Of course, she was here a couple of weeks ago for the security conference.
She gets on quite well with the Prime Minister Starmer, although she's not backing his plans for troops on the ground in Ukraine. No,
but of course, similarly with President Trump, Prime Minister Meloni will respect King Charles as the head of state of Britain, and that is the Trump card, isn't it? It's all about that soft power of diplomacy, strengthening relations between the two nations, and of course, at a time where Russian aggression perhaps is ramping up a little bit, two NATO allies, the UK and Italy, is going to be on full display. We're going to be having a joint military demonstration, a flypast by the Royal Air Force and Italian Air Force, which will be pretty symbolic.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to GBN Tonight with me, Martin Daubney. Now, not a single NHS hospital or trust in London offers women-only spaces, and that's despite last week's Supreme Court ruling that trans women, that's biological men, are not legally women. Now, the NHS has claimed for years that mixed-sex accommodation has been scrapped and replaced with strict single-sex policies. But what's the truth? Well, these so-called policies are riddled with loopholes, allowing trans women, that's biological men, to share toilets, showers and hospital walls with biological women when they're at their most vulnerable. Now, the government hailed the court decision as a victory for common sense, promising it would bring clarity and confidence to service providers like NHS hospitals. But many now say that women are being let down. Their rights to privacy, dignity and safety in medical care are simply being ignored. Well, over the weekend, trans activists took to central London to protest against this ruling, vandalising statues and defacing historic landmarks with pro-trans slogans. Well, joining me now is Lisa Lockie, one of the nurses who are challenging their hospital trust policy over allowing a trans colleague to use the female changing rooms at work in the Darlington area. Welcome to the show, Lisa. Thank you very, very much for your time. So, first of all, let's start with the particulars of your case, if we could, and tell us why you believe that you would be sexually harassed and discriminated against.
Well, our trust allowed a trans colleague who actually was showing no signs of any transition, really just looked like a male, using our changing room, and it just caused such a lot of upset. We did try and sort of contact the management and get them to act upon our feelings, but they were not concerned. It was us that were meant to be at fault, and things progressed from there, which is how we ended up sort of going forward with legal action.
But Lisa Lockie, you're perfectly entitled to value your dignity, your privacy, your safe space. You work for the trust. The trust seem to disagree. They seem to put the rights of a biological man above the rights of women. Why?
I think like a lot of NHS trusts, by the sound of things, they've got very much wrapped up in these equality and diversity programmes, probably introduced by Stonewall, I assume, and they think that what they're doing is the right thing. It's about being kind, but they're forgetting about women's rights.
And the point, Lisa, is that last week the Supreme Court found in your favour, ostensibly, biological women are the only true women. You cannot be a woman if you're a biological man. And yet, story out today, Lisa, 28 NHS trusts in London are not taking any of this advice to heart, and they seemingly are staying silent on your case. Where's West Streeting? Where's Sir Keir Starmer on this? And what does this leave you feeling about the political position on trans issues?
It's really worrying that that we've not really heard anything. I mean, you know, I appreciate the ruling only came out last week. Our trust have been very slow to deal with any of the matters that we've brought to them. So I'm kind of not massively surprised. We're really hoping we're going to hear something personally this week. But we need Wes Streeting to act, you know, and we did. He asked us, we went to see him, we had the discussion with him, and he asked us to draw up a policy to try and help with our situation with the trans person using the changing room, and try and create a safe sex policy for women. And unfortunately, we sent him that policy, and he didn't want to act upon it because he's been waiting to hear from the Supreme Court. But he's got that ruling now. So really, there's nothing to stop him from just implementing the policy.
Well, maybe there might be a resistance, and that seems to be an ideological resistance, because we've seen today that ministers and Labour MPs said they're going to push back against this. Lisa Lockie, does this leave yourself, your colleagues, and millions of women throughout the country believing that even though the law found in your favour There seems to be a sense in the trans community think they're entitled to some form of two-tier justice where their rights supersede those of women.
Yeah, it's certainly seeming that way, and it is a worry. I mean, I said to Patrick the other night that, you know, we were hoping we wouldn't even have to go to court now, but the way things are looking, it's looking like it might well go ahead in October for us now. We're just hopeful that Wes Streeton will act. He's in charge now. NHS England's been abolished. He's in charge. He has the power to implement these policies. It's unlawful what they're doing.
OK, well, thank you very much for joining us on tonight's show. Lisa Lockie, it's a pleasure to have your company. Thank you and good luck with the case.
Thank you.
Let's get the views now of my panel. GB News' senior political commentator Nigel Nelson, as well as Gawain Towler, former Reform UK spokesman. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Nigel, let's start with you. Is there a case here that, particularly, we're seeing, you know, politically, the Labour backbenchers and today seem to think, well, the Supreme Court ruled, and that's as well as maybe, but we're going to push back against it. Why? Why don't the Labour Party respect the rule of the law?
Right. Well, first of all, MPs do make the law, so MPs have every right to start having another look at this.
The Supreme Court overruled that.
The Supreme Court interprets the law. Parliament makes the laws.
The parliamentarians know best. Once again,
that's how the system works. Well, that's how, they hand out the laws. The Supreme Court, if it gets that far, then go and interpret them. The issue we've got here is that what the Supreme Court did was clarify biological sex. That's fine. You cannot change your sex. What it didn't do, and these are the words of Jonathan Sumption, a former Supreme Court judge, was that the way he interprets it, it allows organisations to make changes, but doesn't oblige them to do it.
So the law's not only an ass, it can be totally ignored by the government.
No, not exactly, because the next stage then comes down to what happens then, in the case we've just heard from Lisa, what happens if a woman complains about a biological man being in their changing space?
Well, that's what's happened here.
Well, exactly. So at the moment, the law is not clear about what happens at that point.
But the law should be clear at that point, Gawain Towler. Isn't that the point?
I do
the
think,
Supreme Court ruling.
What I've just heard is, yes, politicians make the law and Parliament should be sovereign. I mean, you spend a lot of time making that the case. However, the Supreme Court's judgment clarifies the law. If those politicians who are trying to push back against it are saying, let's write another law, that's one thing. But they're not. They're opposing a Supreme Court judgment, which is a very different thing altogether.
Well, they're not, because the Supreme Court judgment was very specific.
Yes, it made it very clear.
That you cannot change your biological sex.
And so therefore, when the hospitals have policies saying they have single-sex wards, single-sex bathrooms, single-sex changing rooms, like Lisa was complaining about, that is single sex. If you've clarified there can only be two sexes, guess which sex are allowed in women's rooms?
Yes, that's right. No,
only women, not men.
You're absolutely right. So what some of those hospitals have been doing is that if say a trans woman was going into a woman's ward who is actually a biological
somebody with a beard and a gender recognition certificate to walk into a woman's ward.
But someone actually going into a ward, one of the things that one of the hospitals did was to check if anybody actually minded. And the obvious solution to this is to be able to give trans women their own private rooms. The problem, obviously, is the capacity of the hospital to do that.
Agreed, but they can go into the men's room if they are chaps with beards and a gender recognition certificate.
Yes,
why not?
I mean, in that sense, they could go into whatever they choose.
No, they can't go into whatever they choose because we've decided, the court has ruled that men is one thing, women is another thing, and single-sex spaces are single-sex spaces. And the hospitals make a big song and dance about having single-sex spaces and then decide that men can join the women.
But we go back to the point that it's not that the hospital is not obligated. If Jonathan's assumption is right,
I suspect
it's not obligated.
Jonathan's assumption is a great judge. However, five judges said one thing. Jonathan Sumption has come up with a slightly different
opinion. No, he hasn't. No, all he's saying is his understanding of what those five judges said was you can do it. Women's sport, for instance, what it allows a women's sport to do is to exclude trans women in it. That's fairly clear. In a situation like a hospital, it's less clear, because what happens when someone complains if a trans woman is in their space?
What happens if you have the rules that you're saying, and they say the hospital can go into a ward and say, we've got this bloke coming in, but he has announced that he is trans, he's decided to change, then if the women in the room do not want him in, then what?
OK, gentlemen, we have to leave it there. There we go, clear as mud. The Supreme Court ruled on Wednesday one thing, and the NHS Trust and parliamentarians interpret it in a completely different way. An NHS spokesperson told GB News this: the NHS is working through the implications of the Supreme Court ruling and appreciates the need for revised guidance on same-sex accommodation. While we don't have an exact time frame established yet, we are working closely with governments to provide any further guidance for the health service as soon as possible. Now, coming next, police forces have admitted that they haven't got the faintest Scooby-Doo. They haven't got a clue whether so-called non-crime hate incidents actually do anything to prevent crime. So, should they be scrapped altogether? And MPs and peers have launched a campaign to block President Trump from addressing Parliament on his state visit in September, calling him a serial liar. That's all next.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, because the failure is
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GBN Tonight with me, Martin Daubney. Now, police forces across England and Wales have finally admitted what we all suspected all along. They haven't got the faintest clue whether so-called non-crime hate incidents are actually doing anything whatsoever to prevent crime. For years, they've been justifying their existence as a means to spot community tensions and keep us safe. But when pushed, 14 out of 15 police forces in an FOI said they've done absolutely zero analysis on the data recorded. So is it time for police to scrap them all together and fight crime rather than monitor feelings? Well, joining me now to discuss this is Harry Miller, a founder of Fair Cop, a free speech campaign group who was prosecuted for a tweet that's offended. And Captain Miller, you're the guy that put this FOI in. Tell us what you discovered.
Well, what I discovered, we were lied to at the House of Lords. Lord Herbert and his sidekick, Tom Harding, told the House of Lords that there was plenty of analysis done between non-crime hate incidents and the prevention of crime. I said, no, there isn't. And they told me that I must stop lying to the House, that what I must do is stop spreading misinformation. They were absolutely certain that police forces carried out rigorous checks on non-crime hate incidents, and these were vital in the fight against hate crime. So, of course, what I did is I put in a bunch of FOIs, and quite predictably, it came back that police forces don't do any analysis whatsoever. So we used to call that telling a porky pie, and I've caught them with the pants down. I'll tell you what, Martin. I'll tell you what, there's not been a display of smoke and mirrors quite like this since the Wizard of Oz enticed Dorothy down that yellow brick road. It's all a load of absolute baloney. And I'll tell you what else, Martin. The College of Policing, they've got less heart than the Cowardly Lion, less brains than the old Scarecrow, and less wisdom, or whatever it is, less courage than the Tin Man. This lot need putting out to grass immediately, because I'll tell you what, if you're going to be a liar, if you're going to tell deception, if you're going to try and deceive the great British public, you've got to be a lot smarter than this lot. This lot made Comical Ali look really, really smart. I call Lord Herbert Comical Herbert because that's what he is. He's an absolute national joke.
And to carry on the Wizard of Oz metaphor, Harry Miller, you're the whirlwind that blew the entire roof off. And what are they going to do about this? I mean, you took them to one of the highest courts in the land trying to get non-crime hate incidents struck off as a method of law enforcement, and yet they still carry on.
Well, it's a little bit like the discovery of penicillin, Martin. They've discovered something else for them. It's entirely by accident because they do nothing to prevent actual crime. But what they do, they're really, really good at, is causing and creating a chilling effect on free speech. It's a very, very easy and practical way, by the way, an unlawful way of keeping people's mouths shut on topical issues. What we have is a College of Policing who've got this system and where they can mark you out as a wrong-un because you've said the wrong thing. For instance, until last week, if you said that a man cannot change into a woman, you could be slapped with a non-crime hate incident, as I was. One of the things that I was investigated for was saying this: Sheffield women know the difference between lads and lasses. The College of Policing said that this was a hate crime and this was a precursor to me going on and committing genocide. Well, if I'm guilty of it, so is the Supreme Court. The College of Policing need to have a double dose of reality. Actually, they need to just shut themselves down. They need to apply common sense to themselves and go and do something else, something far more productive, because they are absolutely, utterly useless and hopeless. And you know what? Since they brought in non-crime hate incidents as a means to combat hate crime, guess what? Hate crime's gone up. But they've never one time stopped and thought, I wonder if labelling people as racists and bigots and transphobes and all the rest of it has actually worsened the situation. Well, of course it's worsened the situation. When they came after me, they radicalised me. When they come after somebody else, they radicalise them. So, of course, hate crime and hate incidents going up. And I tell you what, it's right down at the fault of the College of Policing. And if they've got a conscience at all, they quit.
Harry Miller, we have to leave you there, the founder of Fair Cop. Once again, you've had your Weetabix. Always a pleasure to have you on the show. Harry Miller, thank you very much. Let's get to my panel now. Chop too sweet. Let's get straight to Nigel Nelson. What do you make of this? I mean, non-crime hate incidents were meant to be a good thing. Clearly, they're ineffective, they're stoking division, and they're not actually solving crime at all.
Well, I blame the police for this. I mean, the whole point of non-crime hate incidents when they're introduced in 2014 was to monitor community tension. with a view to stopping serious crime.
Well, they haven't.
No, they haven't, because the police, as this FOI has found out, won't analyse them. So there's no point collecting a load of data you don't analyse. Yes, they've gone over the top every so often, but there have been 133,000 of them since they were introduced. Out of those, a handful have come to our attention because the police have gone too far. In the majority of cases, they haven't. But it's useless if you don't collect the data and interpret what that data says.
Hold on. A handful that we've heard about, another 130,000, they're not useless. They are useless.
What I'm saying
they
is
are not crimes. They are not crimes. The police should be working on crimes, not non-crimes.
And we may be talking about something that's racist or...
Well, if it's racist, if it's properly racist, that is a crime.
It is. But
it's not
But it depends at what stage it becomes a crime.
So at what stage... No, hold on. We have a criminal justice system. We have the law. If people are being questioned and their data being taken down by the police for things that are not criminal acts, what are the police doing it in the first place? Because they should not be doing so.
The point is to stop criminal acts. That's what it's designed.
They think they're living in some sci-fi universe.
That's what it was designed to do. But if they don't collect the material, if they don't collect the data to find out where tensions are within a community, it doesn't work.
You're saying that basically the police should be like MI5, double-checking against people, building up dossiers against individuals who aren't breaking the law. No. But might break the law in the future. No, that's ridiculous.
The whole point is to gather intelligence on the local communities they are policing.
Well, just go and pop into the shops and talk to the people.
Well, gentlemen,
that's what they used to do.
Gentlemen, we have to leave it there. Is that really the right way to do it, though? Gather information on communities in case they commit crimes. Thank you very much, Nigel Nelson and Gawain Towler. Thank you very much. Now, up next, I'll be joined by a 100-year-old veteran who is backing a campaign that is trying to raise £1 million to get World War II veterans back to the beaches of Normandy for one last push to mark the historic anniversary of VE Day. You will not want to miss it.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello, here's your latest holiday sun forecast brought to you by the Met Office. We'll see plenty of sunshine across the Mediterranean over the next few days, but also plenty of showers, some of those on the heavy side. Certainly on Tuesday, a few showers across the Canaries and Madeira, some more persistent spells of rain across parts of Spain, and then we head into a mixture of sunshine and scattered locally heavy, even thundery showers across central and eastern parts of the Med. As for the rest of the week, well, western spots will tend to brighten up, certainly some warm sunshine developing here, but plenty of showers continue further east.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Good evening and welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. There's been plenty of rain around for many of us on Easter Monday, but it is going to be turning drier as we head through this evening and overnight. Plenty of clear spells in places. However, low pressure is still very much in charge of our weather. We see that weather front from today continuing to push its way north and eastwards, and the legacy of that cloud, outbreaks of rain continuing across parts of Scotland through the rest of this evening. For the majority of the rest of us, though, any showers that we've seen gradually starting to die out this evening, so turning dry with plenty of clear spells on offer as we head into the early hours of Tuesday morning. Where we do see those clear spells could be turning quite chilly, perhaps a touch of frost in places, and also seeing some mist and fog forming under those clear skies, but generally staying just that little bit milder across the very far northeast, where we do see that cloud and the continuation of some outbreaks of rain persisting through Tuesday morning. Across mainland Scotland, generally a drier picture, a bit of a brighter start to the day. Some mist and fog across parts of Northern Ireland will clear quickly through the morning, as well across parts of Northern England too. But across parts of Wales, the southern half of England, a dry and bright day. Plenty of sunshine and blue skies on offer to start the morning. As we then head through Tuesday afternoon, where we do see any sunshine across the southern half of the country, there will be one or two showers bubbling up, though these likely to be much lighter and a bit more scattered than we saw on Monday. The legacy of that cloud and rain does continue across the very far northeast of Scotland, and then it's all eyes out to the west as we see this next weather front arriving. Feeling pleasant in that sunshine with highs of 17, 18, perhaps 19 degrees, but feeling a bit fresher across Northern Ireland. That weather front then slips its way south and eastwards into the start of Wednesday. It's quite a damp start for much of England and Wales, but the northern half of the country seeing a brighter start to the morning, although still some cloud across the very far northeast, and some showers bubbling up here too. That sets us up through much of next week. Some showers, longer spells of rain, but some drier interludes too, and temperatures around about average or perhaps a little above.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off-limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
And
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, welcome back to GBN Tonight with me, Martin Dorby. Magnificent finale to the show here, because last week we welcomed Johnny Gallagher from the taxi charity for military veterans onto the show, and Johnny launched the Our Heroes Fund live on air, a campaign aiming to raise £1 million to ensure that our World War II heroes and veterans can travel to the 80th anniversary for those VE Day celebrations. Now, for many veterans, this could be their last chance to mark this momentous day when peace returned to Europe. And tonight, Johnny is back with some extraordinary news, and he's joined by someone very, very special, and that is World War II veteran, 100 years young, Dorothea Barron. Dorothea and Johnny, an absolute delight to have you both in the studio. Thank you so much for your time. Dorothea, must start with you. 100 years young, and you took part, of course, in the World War II.
Yes.
But you were a wren. Tell us about what you did to help keep the country safe from Nazis.
Well, I did my best. Well, I was so determined that the Germans weren't going to come into our country, the Nazis. And, you know, we all felt the same. We were so angered that they should dare to even think of coming into our country. They'd bombed London like crazy, and they hadn't got it. And we fought them back, and we fought them to the coast, and then we pushed them over into France, and we pursued them there. We were all so determined that they weren't going to come in and conquer Britain, England.
And you did your resolute, heroic best for that effort, to which, an eternal thank you from myself, GB News viewers, everybody in Britain. Dorothea, this is you back in your service days. Tell us your happiest memories of those wonderful times.
Oh, good heavens. I just think it was meeting people from other parts of Britain and other types of people, you know, different backgrounds, for example. And it was just so releasing of ourselves, and we were dying to push the Nazis back so that they couldn't conquer. It wasn't the German people, they were suffering as badly as we were, but it was just, we were so determined in England then. It wasn't Britain. We were fighting for England, the Welsh were fighting for Wales, and the Scottish were fighting for Scotland. And we were all absolutely... You can't imagine the feelings we had that anybody should dare to come into our country with a nasty foreign ideology.
Well, Dorothea, that fighting spirit is still very much alive in your DNA today. I can almost feel it vibrating in your molecules. Because you've still got every inch of that spirit.
I have, yes, I'm afraid.
No, nothing wrong with that. Now, let's get the link on screen, because we've got a link on screen for how we can get
that is actually the wrong link.
OK, well, let's get... There's a way that people can donate to this.
Yeah.
Johnny, you tell us about this. You're an ambassador for the Taxi Charity for Military Veterans Charity. You're trying to raise £1 million. You started on this on my show last week. You put 20 grand in of your own dosh.
That's correct.
Well done, very generous. Where are we now, and how can people get involved?
Yeah, so we hit over 50,000 on the weekend, so thank you for having us on. Like you said, all the money doesn't just go to these commemorations, it's for future commemorations. We don't know where we are with the governments, we don't know where we are for future events, so this ensures that veterans like Dorothea can do these amazing things. The link is justgiving.com/page/OurHeroesFund. And for me, it's important to make sure these veterans don't have to worry if or not they're going to be able to go and celebrate or to pay respects to their fallen friends and family members. And also there's events throughout the year, and you don't hear that. You know, you only hear people only want photos with these veterans on the 80th anniversaries. You know, politicians just want a photo with them and on the 80th. But there's events and dreams that they want to achieve all throughout the year that keeps them alive.
They are marvellous.
Yeah.
The British tax.
And Dorothea, we saw you there in a Spitfire, I believe. And is there anything left that you wish to achieve? Do you have some dreams as yet unfulfilled?
Oh,
it's going back to Scotland, remember?
Oh, yes. I'd love to go back and see if my little station is still there. My little signal station is still sticking out near Forth Bridge. And we used to watch the ships coming in, and when they were the other side of the bridge, we had to question them to find out who they were and whether we'd let them through or not.
Well, the very, very best of luck with this campaign. Johnny, one more time, read out the link. How do people get involved?
Yeah, it's justgiving.com/page/OurHeroesFund, and all the money goes to the Taxi Charity for Military Veterans. And I think if we do this, and we can achieve this, it will send a big message that we still do care about our heroes.
And Dorothea, the taxi drivers charity is so generous. They are marvellous people.
Well, thank you both for coming in, Dorothea Barron and Johnny Gallagher, with a quick statement to read out from the Veterans Minister, Al Collins, who says this: for the avoidance of doubt, our government will ensure the support is there for Second World War veterans to attend VE Day and D-Day commemorations overseas this year. I'm pleased to confirm that the government will work with veterans charities to ensure Second World War veterans can travel to commemorations this summer. Now, coming up next is State of the Nation with Matt Goodwin. Matt, what's on the menu?
Well, Martin, I'm standing in for the Mogster tonight, Jacob Rees-Mogg. We will have him on the show briefly, giving some reaction, obviously, to the very sad news about the passing away of the Pope. We're also going to be looking at the implications of that UK Supreme Court ruling regarding the legal definition of women. We've got a really big debate in the studio tonight on that, and of course those non-crime hate incidents. We're actually going to be looking at why on earth it is that we don't really know as to whether these things work, yet Yvette Cooper and Labour are adamant on rolling them all out. We're going to be looking at that too, and of course the latest boat numbers.
We have to leave it there. Matt Goodwin, State of the Nation up next. Dorothea, Johnny, thank you very much. Excellent. See you tomorrow. I'll be back at 3.
Please help.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening and welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. There's been plenty of rain around for many of us on Easter Monday, but it is going to be turning drier as we head through this evening and overnight. Plenty of clear spells in places. However, low pressure is still very much in charge of our weather. We see that weather front from today continuing to push its way north and eastwards, and the legacy of that cloud, outbreaks of rain continuing across parts of Scotland through the rest of this evening. For the majority of the rest of us, though, any showers that we've seen gradually starting to die out this evening, so turning dry with plenty of clear spells on offer as we head into the early hours of Tuesday morning. Where we do see those clear spells could be turning quite chilly, perhaps a touch of frost in places, and also seeing some mist and fog forming under those clear skies, but generally staying just that little bit milder across the very far northeast, where we do see that cloud and the continuation of some outbreaks of rain persisting through Tuesday morning. Across mainland Scotland, generally a drier picture, a bit of a brighter start to the day. Some mist and fog across parts of Northern Ireland will clear quickly through the morning, as well across parts of Northern England too. But across parts of Wales, the southern half of England, a dry and bright day. Plenty of sunshine and blue skies on offer to start the morning. As we then head through Tuesday